Welcome, everyone. My name's Nick Prihatko. I am the principal at Hyde Middle School, but also I am the lead administrator when it comes to the school district's puberty and sexual education curriculum. In fifth grade, our human growth and development curriculum is Positive Prevention Plus, which is, the other term for it is we call it like puberty education, which we traditionally teach in fifth grade. And then we do in seventh grade, we do comprehensive sexual education as part of the science curriculum. So tonight we are going to go over kind of all the things you need to know about what your students will learn and why. And just, we're here to just better inform you so you can make the best choices for you and your student. Again, real quick, there'll be a slide. I'll come back later to address some district specific logistics. We're not going to do any raised hand calling tonight, and then you can chat me directly if you have questions, and then we can work in an answer or chat it out on my end to everybody as needed. So we're gonna get started, and I'd like to introduce Heidi, who works for Cardia Services, who's been working with us for quite a while in CUSD, helping us make sure we're picking curriculum that aligns with the state laws, and all of that stuff. And so she's going to walk us through the presentation tonight, and then hopefully have some time at the end for to address any questions that came up in the chat that need kind of everybody to know about. I will send out after the February break next week. I will send out kind of updates with links to this recording, which I'm going to hit. It's already recording. Links to this recording as well as links to the slide deck for you and other information that you'll need. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I'm going to hand it over to you, Heidi.
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. It is lovely to be here. I already see a question. The curriculum is the same as last year. So if you have a kid that has been at CUSD in the last couple years, you have seen this presentation, probably, but you're welcome to stay if you want. But yeah, no changes since last year. Okay, so like I said, welcome in. My name is Heidi. I'm a consultant that works with the district around puberty ed and human growth and development and sexual health education. And I work for an organization called Cardia, which is a national organization, and we support districts like yours throughout the state of California. So I also work in Saratoga and lots of different Santa Clara County districts. I am also a mom of a 14 and a 16-year-old. So I've been doing these presentations, I think, since they were like 6 and 8 or 5 and 7 or something like that. So yeah, live and breathe puberty. I have been teaching puberty for about 25 years because I just love teaching puberty. Fifth graders are my favorite. So I'm going to share with you what this curriculum offers, and we'll see what you think. Okay, like Nick said, we are recording this and the recording will be available to you afterwards if you want to share it with a co-parent or someone that wasn't able to be here today. Okay, so first of all, I do just want to kind of deeply thank you for taking the time to be here. I know it's dinner time. I know it's carpool time. I know it's everybody's tired, and just really appreciate the so far 166 of you people that are here to learn more about how to support your kids as they go through puberty and grow. And what Nick said, if you have a question, please drop it into the Q&A at any time. You can, I'm not going to be checking the Q&A until the end. Nick is going to be checking it throughout, so you can chat directly with Nick. Okay, and here is what we're doing. So I'm just going to spend, 5 or 10 minutes kind of setting the context for why this is so important. And then we're going to dive really into the curriculum. We are going to give you some need to know logistics for yourself. And then we'll round it out at the end with just some guidance for your own conversations with your own kiddos, so that you can support their learning at home, which is super, super crucial. And then at the end, I do have lots of recommendations for resources. These slides will also be available as a PDF for you after the presentation as well, in case you want to click on any of those links. Okay, and then just to be really clear, we just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Tonight, the purpose of this meeting is for you to understand better how we do puberty education, human growth and development here at CUSD. We teach a state, vetted curriculum. We're in alignment and in compliance with the state ed code. And we want you to understand exactly what it is that your kids are going to be learning so that you can decide if this is the place for them to learn this education or if you'd, rather do it at home or through any other of the great organizations that are available in our community. So that is what we are doing. And what we are not doing tonight, just to make it real clear, we're not debating the ed code. We're not going to be talking about politics. We're not going to be talking about whether this is the right curriculum or the wrong curriculum. This curriculum was vetted by a group of teachers, parents, administrators, and this curriculum was approved by the board. And so this is the curriculum that we're using. We're not debating whether or not we're going to use it or not. And we're also not going to debate whether or not we need to be inclusive of all of our students. Our ed code does require that we make sure that we are reflecting all of the diversity in our community. And so that means that all types of learners, ethnicities, races, abilities, gender, sexual orientations, all the other kinds of identities that our students have, you will see those reflected in the curriculum. So that is, we're not, debating that. That's a law of state of California and also values of our public school districts in California. So just wanted to be clear on that. And then just in terms of like our assumptions, we know that you're here because you love your kids and want the best for them. That is also why we are here. We are passionate about this work because research shows and with decades of our work, we know that this is protective and preventative for our kiddos. And so that's why the state of California has decided that this should be education that is given equitably to all students. And so, that's what we're doing here. We really love your questions. We know that anytime you share a challenge that you're having, that builds new strength. So please do bring that. This is how we parent as in community. We're all experts on our own families. We all know what's best for our family. So I'll share with you a little bit what I know from the research, what I know anecdotally for doing this work, for 25 years, and then you'll take what you want and do what you want. And I always like to say, like, I have two different kids that I have to parent them like really differently. One's an introvert, one's not an introvert. One really likes to talk and hang out with me. One really doesn't want to have much to do with me. Like, so I have to parent them really differently. And so there's no one way for me to say, like, here's the way to talk to your kid about this topic, because every kid is going to be different. And so I'll share some anecdotes and I'll share some recommendations. And like I said, you'll take what works best for you. Because we're going to have an official recording, we ask that you do not record. And like I said, we'll provide that recording for you. And then again, all questions are welcome. Okay, so I just want to start out by saying you are your child's primary sexuality educator. You've been educating and teaching your child around sexuality and sexual health since they were a baby, right? About how you label body parts, about how you model relationships, about how you talk about gender roles and stereotypes, about how you go to the doctor. All of those kinds of things are things that parents get to teach their kids. You get to teach your kids all of your values around sexuality, around sexual health, around body autonomy, and those kinds of things. Our job is to teach science, to teach fact-based, medically accurate, and age-appropriate knowledge and skills, which again, through lots of research has been shown to lead to positive health outcomes. We see healthier kids when they have knowledge and skills to know how to take care of their bodies. And so that's what our job is sticking with the facts. We send them home to you for values and for setting limits. And so together we can work with you in the community to make sure that all of the students are getting their needs met. And on that note, I also just want to, say again that we in the public schools, we spread a wide umbrella to make sure that everybody feels safe here. That's a mandate of our state. We want to make sure that everyone can thrive academically and socially and emotionally. And so, every child is welcome here. Every family is welcome here. And we know that kids learn best when they see themselves and their families reflected in the curriculum. So you might see a lesson that you're like, wow, this is exactly where my kid needs to be and exactly where their learning is right now. And you might see another lesson that's like, whoa, that's not enough for my kid, or that's too much for my kid, but maybe that's perfect for your neighbor's kid. And so that's kind of how public school works, is like we have to try to reach all of the different kids that we have, all of the different kinds of families that we have. And so again, that's why we stick with the facts and you teach your values. The only values that we teach are that everybody's welcome here and that everyone deserves dignity and respect. Okay, so just to again let you know, I know sometimes parents can get really nervous about talking about different topics with their kids, especially if you haven't started talking about these topics yet. And sometimes parents wonder, well, if you talk about body parts, if you talk about how babies are made or things like that, are kids going to get curious about things they didn't know about? And what I can tell you again from research is that puberty education is protective and preventative. I'll say it again because I think this is just really important. Puberty education is protective and preventative, right? We know that when kids know how to label their body parts, and we know when they feel autonomy over their body and they know what their boundaries are and who is and isn't supposed to touch them in different parts of their bodies, we see that they're less vulnerable to abuse, right? That is a huge deal. It is very important that your kids know how to label the body parts and know when it's appropriate and not appropriate for other people to touch them on their bodies. We see with this education that there's a reduction in bullying. We see a promotion of kids really understanding about how to make good decisions, how to communicate with other kids, all of the other really good stuff that comes along with social emotional learning. We see promoting gender equity and advancing gender equity, meaning instead of believing like, oh, girls can't do that or boys can't do that, we see like, people can do what they want to do based on whatever it is that they want to do. Like if someone wants to be a doctor, it doesn't matter what their gender is, they can be a doctor and things like that. We also see that it promotes healthy relationships, reduces risks of sexual assault and intimate partner violence. And we also see, frankly, that it increases academic success. And the research that I'm quoting here is specifically around LGBTQ youth because we know that LGBTQ youth often feel a little bit more unsafe at school, depending on the school community. And when you feel unsafe at school, it's hard to focus on your academics, but it really translates for anybody that when you feel safe in your body and safe in your school community, you can focus on your math or you can focus on your social studies. And so puberty education works towards all of that, including academic success. Okay, so this may be different from when you were growing up. It used to be when I was growing up, for example, they like took out the girls and put them in one space and I don't and talked about periods, and then they took out the boys and that was all secretive and who knows what they even talked about, and we never talked about with each other. And what we found over the years is that it is effective and supportive for everyone to learn together in their fifth grade class with their teacher. So that's why we wait till this time of the year so that the teacher can already build like a really great and safe community with their class. This way, this is more inclusive of all of the students in the class. It builds empathy for all students. It also, by the way, helps you by building communication. I can't tell you how many times I've had moms ask me if they can talk to their sons, or dads ask me if they can talk to their daughters about the ways their bodies are changing. And of course, you can talk across gender with your family members or your friends or your community members in a way that feels safe for you. It's really important that humans understand how humans work. We normalize for the kids, for the students, that puberty is a human being experience, right? And that learning about how bodies develop and how brains develop is just simply science, and we can all learn about that together. So that's how we do it. Let me turn it to Nick for a minute to go over some of the logistics for you.
Okay, yeah, kind of already talked about a couple of these things, I think. But anyway, on the message, so your school site will determine the exact window of instruction. Most of the elementary schools do it kind of in the May, June timeframe. But your school principal will send specific dates to you at least 2 weeks in advance. Um, in order to opt out, just be like, hey, I don't think my kid's ready yet. I don't want them to participate in this. You need to talk to your school principal. You can just shoot them an email. Hey, my student is blah, blah, blah. We would prefer them not to participate this year. That goes to your school principal. Not me, your school principal. Just because I got a lot of seventh grade ones when we did the seventh grade one a couple weeks ago. So your school principal will take care of that for you. When I After the February break, I'll send out an update message that'll give you some information if you wanted to review the curriculum in person. We're going to do a really good kind of overview tonight. But if you still have questions and you want to see it, I'll have binders available, and you can leaf through the binders that the teachers actually use to teach the lessons. That information will be in my update that will come out the last week of February. Other than that, other questions that you have between now and then, you can shoot me an email. Your school principal can help you, but I'm happy to be the first point of contact if you want to. And then of course there's the website for PPP where there's some good resources and other information about the curriculum. But yeah, I mean everything, if you hang on until the week after next, I'll get you updates. So they're gonna have a bunch of extra information that should answer most of your questions.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and jump in. So you can always check out if you want the positivepreventionplus.com website. There are certain things that you can see on that website. There's a drop-down menu that's resources, and there's good resources for parents and caregivers there. And also you can see a curriculum preview. And they have curricula for high school, for middle school, for special populations, which is like kids that have different learning needs, and then the elementary. So your kids are obviously getting the elementary curriculum. And Positive Prevention Plus is an organization that's been around for a long, long time. It started out as a partnership with the American Red Cross in the 90s as an HIV prevention organization. But of course, it's evolved quite a bit since then. This particular curriculum is used throughout the state of California quite broadly, and in many of the neighboring districts in Santa Clara County. And the high school edition of Positive Prevention Plus was recognized as a federal evidence-based intervention after it went through a longitudinal study for 5 years in 2010 through 2015. And it was found that the kids that did participate in that curriculum had better health outcomes than the kids that didn't in certain indicators like reduction of, fewer sexual partners, starting to have sex later. So all of the kind of good things that we try to teach towards more health and safety. Okay, the topics that are covered, there's 7 lessons. There's a getting started lesson, which is really just about climate setting. So I'll show you that in a minute. There's a lesson about friendship. There's a lesson about bullying behaviors, a lesson about puberty changes, a lesson about human reproduction, a lesson about hygiene, which the teachers love teaching that because that's always helpful to get some kids, thinking about showering and stuff. And then the last lesson is called Staying Safe and Healthy. So I'm actually going to take you through all of the lessons in just a minute. There's a teacher's guide that is like very highly scripted that goes along with a slide deck that your kids will see. And so I'm going to again show you some of the slides in just a minute, but you can see that so the teachers are not like making up anything off the top of their heads. They're like, very carefully kind of following, where it says for slide 1, say this, for slide 2, say this, and talk about this. And then if kids ask questions that are outside of what's being taught, the teachers are trained to answer like, that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it. It's outside of the scope of this course, or it's not taught in this curriculum, but you can talk to your trusted adult about that question. So anything that's not in the curriculum will not be taught. We're very strict about that here. There is a workbook and there are handouts that, you might get to see. Actually, Nick, can I ask you to speak about, is the handbook or the workbook, is that coming home at the very end? Or,
We leave that up to the teacher
okay.
discretion. So yeah.
Okay, so you might see it daily, or you might see it at the very end, or you might not see it at all. So you can ask your kids, "Hey, can I see your workbook? I know you have a workbook," and see what that's all about. And then every lesson, so it's pretty standardized. It has an opening and a closing video. The opening video kind of sets up the dilemma, and the closing video ties it up nicely after the kids have gone through some activities and had some discussion. And I did just want to also say the curriculum calls it homework. It's a bit of a misnomer. It's not actually homework. They don't turn it in. They don't get graded on it. They are conversation prompts for the kids to have with their adults. And so we highly encourage them to do that. Research shows that kids that have a trusted adult that they can talk to about these topics um, have better health outcomes. And so we're just really trying to encourage that home communication around these topics as well. Okay. Another thing I want to tell you about right before we jump into the curriculum is a technique we use called the anonymous question box. All students are given the opportunity to anonymously submit questions after each lesson. And then the teachers will collect the questions. They go home and they look at them after class, and they can think about how they want to answer them or do research if they need to, or even reach out to a colleague or a leadership, a site leadership, if they have questions about, how they should answer it. Sometimes they even reach out to me, actually. And so the teachers are trained to answer. They have a whole protocol that they're trained in how to answer questions, and they answer the fact-based questions. And like I said before, they send any kind of values question back to you. So, what is a good age to start dating? Or, is it okay to this? Or is it okay to that? Those kinds of questions they don't answer. They only answer questions that have to do with facts and the science that they're teaching. Okay, so I want to just jump into the getting started lesson. I'm going to actually show you the slides from the Positive Prevention Plus website so you can see exactly what a full lesson looks like. I'm not going to do that for every lesson because we'll be here until like 10 p.m., but I will show you this particular lesson. This lesson goes over an introduction of the topics that are going to be covered. It acknowledges the awkwardness for some kids of talking about these embarrassing topics, and it sets group agreements. It introduces them to the human life cycle. I'll show you all these slides now. And then again, it has the anonymous question box. So let me bring over this. And Nick, please tell me if for some reason you cannot hear when I do the opening and closing video. Okay, so this is the getting started lesson. And again, these are the exact slides that your kids will see. The slides that I'm showing you, that I have been showing you, those are slides that I created for you. I have some screenshots on those slides of the slides your kids will be seeing. These are exact slides from Positive Prevention Plus that your kids will be seeing. So this is the first getting started lesson. And I'm going to show you the opening video now.
And that is where babies come from. Now, let's talk about the changes your bodies are going through. Can anyone tell me what is the definition of puberty? Oh my gosh, that was awkward. Yeah, I know. I can't stand talking about the P word. Which one? Puberty or period? You guys are so gross.
Guys, do you want to come over to my place to play video games?
Yeah, awesome. Totally.
Hi, guys. Nice to see you all. So what did you learn in school today?
Well, we learned about puberty.
Oh, what did you find most interesting about the lesson on puberty?
Okay, so that's the opening lesson, and it just really acknowledges like, oh my gosh, this is really hard and challenging for some of us. And then they go through and they check for understanding, and so they have a little discussion with the classmates. I mean, sorry, the teacher has a little discussion with the class about what they did at school and why that was potentially challenging for them. And then they talk about, how do people act when something might be embarrassing for them. And so they talk about, for some people, they're not used to talking about these topics. Some people talk about them with their families and some don't. And for some people, it feels really private or it feels really personal. Um, and it's not talked about at school typically and things like that. So they kind of acknowledge that that can be difficult for some of us. And then they ask the kids, how do you feel, or how might someone act if they feel embarrassed? And they recognize that, some of the ways that people manage this big emotion of being embarrassed might look like laughter or joking, or might look like being really quiet or talking to a friend or something like that. And so they just, again, acknowledge that we might see some of this behavior coming out in class because people just might be feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And again, some of us are really excited to be here, and some of us have been waiting our whole lives to talk about this stuff. And some of us, it can feel awkward. And so they go ahead and they set some group agreements, and the class actually sets these. So there are some examples here that the teachers use, but the class gets to decide which ones that they want to use for their own class. And of course, teachers already have like group norms that they've been working with all year. Some of them include this stuff, but things like using, medical terminology and things like that are helpful for this context. So they go ahead and do that with their teacher. And then they look at the human life cycle. And what's nice about this is it just really normalizes that puberty is just another stage. All it is, puberty, and you can tell your own kids this, puberty is simply just when kids' bodies and brains grow into grown-up bodies and brains. It's just a period of time, usually between 8 to 16-ish, that kids are changing. Bodies and brains are changing. And so it's a time of rapid growth. It's a time of big emotional growth. And it's just another life stage. They've been going through many life stages their entire life, and they will continue to go through life stages as they get older. There's a little bit of work around hereditary and non-hereditary traits, and this is simply so that kids can understand that some of their puberty changes are going to be related to things that they can do something about, and most of them are going to be determined by their genetics. And so if they live with people that they're genetically related to, they can even ask those people, like, what was your puberty like, or how old were you when you got your period, or when your breast started to grow, or when you got body hair, or whatever it was. And so they can learn from your experience. And then they talk about different traits that are inherited and different traits that are not. So, what color your eyes are, what color your hair is, those are inherited traits, of course. And then things like, kindness, those can, of course, be learned, and that we can all work on those kinds of traits. And then they go into reliable sources of information. So here's the thing, with a fifth grader, our recommendation is always to ask a grown-up to help you do a search online before you look for information about the ways that bodies change, because grown-ups can really help kids craft questions so that the question leads to like medically accurate information and not, all of the other things that are on the internet for entertainment or misinformation or, pornography even. Kids accidentally stumble on that. As soon as they can start doing searches, they can stumble on things that are, not really meant for kids. So the curriculum talks about that they should ask for help from a grown-up before doing research on the internet about these kinds of topics, and that they should get some reliable websites if they want to learn more on their own. They should talk to you about reliable websites, or get some reliable websites from their teachers, so that they know where to do that research. And I'll go over some of those at the end with you. And then they talk about who their trusted adults might be. Their trusted adults might be a mom or a dad or an aunt or uncle or grandparent. Maybe it's if they're living in a foster family or a different caregiver. Maybe it's a best friend's parent. Maybe it's a school counselor or a nurse, or a youth group leader. So there's lots of trusted adults out there. It's really important that every kid has a trusted adult or a few trusted adults. So again, this is another great conversation that you can have with your own kids, is like, if you're not available or if they want to talk to somebody that's not you, who else do you trust about these topics that would be somebody that you want your kid to go to. And then they they say that they're going to be using medically accurate terms when they talk about body parts, not slang terms. They want to make sure everybody knows how to talk to a doctor and how to describe the parts of their body in that way. And then they wrap up.
Oh, come on, guys. It's not that big of a deal. We talked about all the changes our bodies are going through and what our bodies will look like when we're adults.
Oh, was there anything about the lesson that really surprised you?
Only that some people start puberty before others.
Yeah, that's why some of us girls are taller and looks more mature than you boys.
Wow, I can't believe you could talk with your mom like that. Your parents are really cool.
Yeah, I really wish sometimes I could talk with my parents about things like puberty.
Maybe we should just try and mention it like Johnny did.
Yeah, guys, like I said, it's not so big a deal. Well, see you tomorrow at school.
Great. So again, it's just encouraging those conversations at home or with their trusted adults. And then the teacher again checks for understanding what happened in the end of the story, and there's a little discussion there. And then the teacher reviews what we learned today. So this is obviously a good teaching tool to go over what was learned. So that kind of cements the learning in. And then they can do a little true false quiz if they want, where they can kind of click through. And then they encourage them to talk to you about what they learned. So I have some of the discussion questions embedded in my PowerPoint here. So for example, at the end of lesson 1, the students are prompted to ask you at about what age you were when you went through puberty and how you felt about going through puberty. And so, this is a great time to discuss like how you learned about puberty, what you wish you knew, what you want them to know, what you care about for them, things like that. So that could be a fun way to start that conversation. Okay, that was all of lesson 1. Like I said, I'm going to go much more quickly through the other lessons. Lesson 2 is about friendship. What I want you to know about this lesson is that right now, your kid's job in 5th grade is learning how to be a good friend. It's continuing that learning that they've been doing, their whole lives, because really learning how to be in a healthy relationship with friends is the scaffolding or the building blocks of a future, romantic relationship someday. So right now for, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, that is their work, is learning how to be a kind, good friend, learning how to identify characteristics that they have that make them a good friend and that help them have empathy for other people. That is their work in the world. And so the story is about 2 girls. So Sarah and Dulce have been friends forever, and now they're I think Sarah is wanting to be friends with another girl and still wants to be friends with her old friend Sarah, but also wants to be friends with the new friend. And so they're kind of navigating that. And I know that probably sounds really familiar to some of you, because this starting around 5th grade, there becomes for some kids, a lot of friendship drama and shifting in interests and shifting in friend groups. And, middle school, we see that quite a bit. And so this is a great time to start talking about friends and relationships. And then the curriculum simply goes into things like, what does it look like for a good friend? What does it look like if somebody's, someone spreading rumors about you and pressuring you to do things you don't want to do? Like, that's not really a sign of a good friend. And so they kind of break those things down. And then once your kid gets to middle school and high school, then, these same kinds of conversations can be had about romantic relationships. But in this moment, it's really about friendships. So that's great for you to also continue at home. You can talk about, they're going to be prompted to talk to you about your favorite activity when you were their age. And you can talk about things like maybe you want to share like sometime you hurt somebody's feelings and how you fixed it, or any of those kinds of good modeling around about being a good friend is important conversations for you. Okay, this then moves us into a little bit unhealthier behaviors, bullying behaviors. And so this is also, your teachers have been working with your kids on this all year. This is not new to fifth grade, but this just kind of goes into it a little bit differently in this context. So, for example, the little scenario has Esther is unfortunately being bullied by a kid who's because of her height, and he pushes her down, and another kid comes to her rescue and says, that's not cool. Don't do that. And so the kids get to see what it looks like when somebody's an upstander and intervenes in a bullying situation, which is great. And then these are just some examples of the slides that your kids will see. So they do talk about cyberbullying, which is, sending negative messages online and posting negative messages online. They talk about different kinds of, in-person bullying, internet bullying, about how bullying makes people feel. And they even do some empathy building around why people often bully others. And, sometimes it's very common that when people are bullying others, it's because they're either being bullied at home or they've been bullied younger, and they're trying to flex their power when they feel powerless in a different situation. And so sometimes it can actually help kids to understand that, and to have empathy for somebody that's doing that they probably are, being hurt somewhere else. People who hurt people are usually people who are hurt from somebody else. So that's an important message for your kids to hear. There's some conversation around using social media. And again, emphasizing the importance of talking to a trusted adult and getting permission, and also just, recognizing that whoever you think you're talking to on the internet, online, may or may not be who they say they are, may or may not be the age they say they are. You shouldn't agree to meet somebody that you meet on the internet in person without telling a trusted adult or going with a trusted adult and all of that kind of stuff. And again, your kids are already learning this stuff at school. This is not only in this curriculum, it's just one of the places. And then they talk a little bit about assertive communication. So if a friend or a group of kids that they're hanging out with is wanting to do something that they don't want to do, how can they resist that? And how can they, set their boundaries and say, no thanks, or I'm not interested in doing that. I'd rather do something else, or we can hang out, if kids are going to the store and they're going to steal something or whatever it is, they don't want to do that. They can, they can know that that's not something that they want to be part of, and they can just state their boundaries and say, you guys go ahead, but I'm going to stay here. I'm not going to do that. And then they talked about who they can talk to for help if they feel that they're being pressured by friends to do something that they are not interested in doing. Some conversations that they'll be prompted to have with you are around bullying and being bullied, or what you would want them to do if they saw a friend being picked on by someone who they can talk to. Okay, now we get into the puberty changes. So this is the lesson where we start to talk about body changes and mood changes and things like that. In this scenario, the teacher is lining up all the kids by height. And so Johnny's feeling awkward because he's bigger than everybody else, and Esther's feeling awkward because she's smaller than everybody else. And so the kids kind of talk about how, everybody's on their own pace, everybody's developing having their own unique puberty experience, and and that's okay. We're not supposed to look just like our friend or grow just in the same way as our friend. And then I wanted to show you these slides because these are some of the physical changes that are discussed in the curriculum. So the fact that, in order to grow, our bones have to grow, our muscles have to grow. So we have to gain weight, and we have to, we're all going to get taller. Some of us are going to get a lot taller. Some of us are going to get a little taller. We're going to need to eat more. We're going to sweat more. We're going to probably have body odor. We're going to get hair in new places. Our genitals are going to grow, all of this kind of stuff. You can see that for the most part, many of these changes are the same. And then there are some changes that happen specifically in bodies that, have a penis and testicles and testosterone, and then in bodies that have, a vulva, vagina, breasts, and estrogen, progesterone. So there's a little bit of conversation just around, again, that most of the changes are pretty similar and some of the changes are different. And then there's also some conversation about different, like social and emotional changes. So things like mood swings, right? Like the limbic system of young people is like developing much faster than the prefrontal cortex. So they feel their moods in a very big way. they might start to feel attraction to others, or they might want to start to feel like they are attractive to others. We know that a lot of kids, this is a time when they start to understand their sexual orientation and the kinds of people that they might be attracted to. Kids might just start to feel it's very developmentally appropriate for them to feel more engaged with their peers and maybe a little bit less engaged with their families. For some of them, not all of them. But that is something that we see as they move, towards middle school and high school. And then also a greater concern around how they look and is everybody looking at them and stuff like that. Teens are kind of wired to think that everybody's paying attention to them when probably nobody is. But and then I wanted to just show you the terms that are defined here. So this is just simply learning vocabulary. There's no values put in here other than, everybody can, everybody has the right to be treated with respect and dignity, but we're defining some terms that kids have heard around on the media or heard in community and stuff like that. So they define the term of biological sex, or some people say sex assigned at birth. This is basically based on the body parts that somebody has, or the chromosomes that somebody has, or the hormones that somebody has. The vast majority of people are either female or male. We know that there's 1.7% of the population that is intersex and that has a mixture of hormones or a mixture of body parts. This curriculum doesn't really go into that, but it just lets kids know that the biological sex is usually female or male. And then these are other terms that are defined. So the concept of gender, right, of like how our culture right now defines masculine or defines femininity, masculinity, or something a little bit more fluid. That some people feel like those boxes really work for them. Some people don't feel like those boxes really work for them. So that's kind of what it talks about in terms of gender. It talks about gender identity, that some people see their gender, understand their gender to be the same as their body parts. Some people see their gender to be something different. It also talks about gender expression, which is the way that we like wear our hair, the clothes that we wear that kind of show the world how we understand our gender, right? And again, some people dress in a way that is kind of in the stereotypes of the gender, and some people don't. And then it talks about that, like I said, some people, their gender identity is in alignment with their body parts, and for some people, their gender identity is different than the body parts that they have. And so again, these are just terms that are defined, and the idea is that people of all identities deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. There is a video that I guess, Nick, this will be in the email that will go out. It's called Puberty and You. It's a 13-minute video. Teachers can choose to show this video if they would like to, and it just explains all of the different things that are already explained in the curriculums, but it's a really great educator from the Seattle Public Schools that is in that video. After this lesson, the students are prompted to talk to you about things that make them happy or sad or embarrassed or scared. And again, a really great opportunity to talk about emotions and feelings and how you regulate your emotions with your kids. Okay, I need to take a drink. Okay, here we are getting into the human reproduction lesson, and where we get to talk about all these different anatomical and physiological changes that happen during puberty. So the little story here, the video, is that Ali wakes up one morning and feels really surprised because his PJs feel kind of like wet and sticky, and Sarah in a different house wakes up and she feels nervous because she woke up and there's a little blood on her sheets and she doesn't know what's happening. And so they both call out to their parents in a lot of fear. Their parents, in the closing, the parents say, "Oh, Ali, you just had a nocturnal emission or a wet dream. You're fine. That's your body just going through puberty." And same with Sarah. "Oh, your body's just, that must be the beginning of your period. That's fine. That's something that happens during puberty." So their parents help reassure them that they're okay. So the take-home message for you is please, please, please don't let your kid be that kid that like has never learned about periods or never learned about wet dreams and that is surprised when they have one. What we know is that it's really important for kids to understand these things before they go through those changes, not after and they're when they're scared. Okay, so, oh, can you still hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I think we're good.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I just saw some of the chat. Okay. So, oops, I wanted to tell you first what I was going to do. I'm about to show you some line drawings of anatomy. What we do in the classroom and the way that we teach teachers is to make sure we give kids a heads up before we get to the line drawings. And so I will model what we do in the classroom, which is that the next slide is going to show you a line drawing of the body parts of somebody that has a uterus and a vulva and also somebody that has a penis. So I want to make sure if you feel comfortable looking at the slide, it's just a line drawing. If you don't feel comfortable, you can look down or you can look away. It's all good. And then the other thing I want to let you know is this is just one representation of a body part, just in the same way that like if you look around the room and you see all the noses that are in the room, they all look different. But if you see a line drawing of a nose, you know it's a nose, but you don't expect that to look exactly like your body part. So this is the same thing. These body parts, this might look like the way your body looks. It might not look like the way your body looks. And because bodies come in all shapes and sizes and all of that kind of good stuff. So here we go. Here are the line drawings that your kids will see, not all at once, but I'm putting them all on one slide just for the sake of time here. You can see on the left-hand side, we can see that these two, the left middle and the left are internal, right? The uterus, fallopian tubes, the ovaries. And so the teachers will explain, that the ovaries store the eggs, that the eggs are once a month released starting in puberty. They travel down the fallopian tubes into the uterus where they're waiting to see if they're going to be fertilized. And if they're not fertilized, then that lining building up in the uterus and the microscopic egg come out through the vagina. That's the period. On the other side here on the right-hand side, we see an internal diagram of a body that has the penis and testicles. We learn that the sperm are created in the testicles, again, starting in puberty, that there's a kind of a sperm highway from the testicles out through the penis, and that the penis is also that same tube that can bring the sperm outside of the body also can bring urine outside of the body. That's true for people that have a penis and people that have a vagina and a vulva. There are two different orifices for the urine and for the menstrual fluids. So the next picture I'm going to show you is of a penis that is erect. The reason why we like to show the different penis positions is so that kids can understand the difference between the peeing position or the resting position and also the position in which the sperm can be released through an ejaculation. So I'll show you that picture now. There it is. And, we know that kids with penises have been having erections their whole lives, but of course they happen more often during puberty because of hormones, and they sometimes can happen when kids are least expecting them. And so we want to make sure that kids feel comfortable and know what to do if it happens at school or on the bus or wherever it is. And that it's not something to be embarrassed about, that it is just something that happens at this stage in life as the hormones are flowing more and the body is, becoming a grown-up body. The next slide that I'm going to show it's a little more of a close-up to the vulva. And again, I do want to just remind you, because some people may have come late, everybody learns with their fifth grade class. So all humans learn about all humans, basically, right? And we really remind them that they live in families and have friends and community members with different body parts than them. And it's the same thing of kind of learning about like a dog's body parts or a horse's body parts, or, we're learning about human body parts in science. And so again, be thinking about what questions might your child have. Like, might they get confused? I can't tell you how many times we get asked if people poop out their babies because kids don't know the difference between the digestive system and the reproductive system. And of course, how would they? They can't see those things because they're internal. And so this is a great opportunity for them to understand, the different systems, that they are near each other, but they're separate and not connected to each other. And it's also important for them to understand how to take care of their bodies. The next slide is going to go a little bit more into menstruation. And again, really being thoughtful. What does your kid need to know about menstruation? If they are somebody that has a uterus, then they definitely are going to be curious about what to do if they get their period at school or if they get their period, outside of the home, and how they're going to take care of it. So the teachers will, of course, show pads and tampons and those kinds of products. And we really try to just normalize that these are hygiene products that anybody can carry. Anybody, if you have chapstick or Band-Aids, you can have, pads, because half the population is going to need them. And so, and again, if your child is not somebody that has a uterus, maybe they know somebody that has a uterus and they can be empathetic and thoughtful about the body changes that their friends are going through as well. This is how I wanted to make sure that you understand how we talk about conception. So it's very scientific, right? They talk about the sperm, the recipe for a baby is a sperm in an egg meeting and then growing inside of a uterus. So that's always the recipe. The conversation about how a sperm and an egg can meet, they're introduced to the fact that doctors can help that happen, scientists can help that happen. It can also happen through sexual intercourse, which is when a penis goes inside a vagina. Those are, some of the many ways that conception or that fertilization can happen. And then we go right into what happens when that egg is fertilized and those cells start to divide and eventually differentiate and grow into an embryo, which implants into the side of the uterus and grows into a fetus. And then, after about 40 weeks or so, that baby turns over and is born either vaginally or through a C-section. And they are, get their nutrients through a placenta. I realize I'm telling you all this information extremely quickly, but that is how it's covered. And I will tell you what is most interesting to young people at this age is how twins are made and how the babies get out, and does it hurt and things like that. So the vast majority of questions are really about, like, how is that fetus growing, and how do the cells turn into, toenail cells or, skin cells and things like that. They are not really concerned so much about the sexual activity. We don't talk about sexual activity. And also kids think it's kind of gross, which makes sense developmentally, so that we don't really go into that. If you want your kid to know that people have sex because they love each other or it feels good or whatever, all the different great reasons why people have sex, you can talk to them about that at home. That is developmentally appropriate for them to know, FYI, but we don't talk about it in class. We just talk about the science. Okay, yeah, you can talk about, like, when would be a good time to have kids and why, things like that. Okay, I'm going to go quickly through these next two lessons. So lesson 6 is about hygiene. And really, it's an opportunity for them to learn a little bit more about things like deodorant and showering. And it's a pretty sweet lesson. Sometimes we actually guide teachers not to use this little video, which is about a kid kind of smelling not so good, because we want to make sure that nobody's being made fun of for their smells, and that everybody has different ways of dealing with their body odor. But we really encourage kids to shower, to wash their face, to wash under their arms, things like that, to talk to you about different products that you might want them to use, like different kinds of shampoos or deodorants or facial scrubs or moisturizers or things like that. Really, we again recognize that those are family choices. And then we talk a little bit about managing menstruation, again, pads, tampons, things like that, the basics. We talk a little bit about, if someone has a wet dream and they wake up and their PJs are all wet, what they can do, just they can change their PJs, or if they need to change their sheets, they can take a shower when they wake up. And then also there's a mention of vaginal discharge, right, which is kind of the body, the vagina cleaning itself. And it's also indicative that the body is getting ready to go through puberty. So if your kids are wondering, like, how do I know when I'm going to get my period? Like, usually the puberty books say about 2-ish years after breast buds start and vaginal discharge starts. It could be longer, could be shorter, but those are good things for you to be able to talk about with your kiddo. Okay, I'm almost done, you guys. So that they'll be encouraged to talk to you about hygiene products and ways to deal with their different body changes. And then this last lesson is kind of meaty. They learn about consent, the concepts of consent, and then they learn about what happens when there isn't consent, and that it can sometimes be sexual harassment or abuse. They also learn about mental health issues and resources for staying healthy. And so Dulce, one of the kids, is wondering what she's going to be like when she gets older, and what she can do now, as a young person, to take good care of her health, and also to take good care of her family's health, which is kind of sweet. This is the video. It's called Consent for Kids. And I think for the sake of time, I'm not going to show it to you, but this is available on YouTube. It's a great video. It's about 2 minutes, and it just talks about the things that kids can consent to and that kids can't consent to. And kids can consent to, a high five or to giving a friend a hug, but you have to ask first. You can't just make an assumption that someone wants to give you a hug. So again, scaffolding and building blocks for asking those bigger questions later as they get older. So that video is shown in class. And then they talk a little bit about that consent is basically like asking for permission, right? So whether you're borrowing someone's cell phone or their pencil, or whether you want to give them a hug or touch their hair, you have to ask first, and then you have to listen to their answer, and then respect their answer. If they say no, then you have to respect their no. And then it does talk about things that people should never ask you to do, like touch private parts together, take off clothes together. And especially if a grown-up is asking you to do those things, that would never be okay. Grown-ups should never do those things with kids. Kids cannot consent to sexual activity, and so on and so forth. And then again, reminders of who are those adults out there that can keep you healthy. What do you need to do to stay healthy, to eat well and exercise and sleep enough and stuff like that. And then a little bit of discussion around mental health. Kids these days are already very well aware of anxiety and depression and feeling sad and things like that. And so just some conversation about, what can someone do if they're starting to have those kinds of feelings, and again, where can they get some support. And then last but not least, there is some conversation again around, they kind of re-look at stating boundaries and about being a good friend, and that good friends don't pressure their friends into doing something that they don't want to do, which again, I think is just a really important message. And it's a great message for you to continue to talk about at home as well. Some other take-home messages for you. No one has the right to engage another person in any kind of sexual activity without their permission, any kind of touching or any kind of conversation without their permission. And then it's important to talk to a trusted adult if you know someone who's experiencing a situation like that. Okay. Woo. And oops, I think this is a duplicative. Sorry. Around staying healthy. I already showed you these. Okay. They are, again, encouraged to talk to you about life goals and about questions about their health, and who else they can talk to if they have other questions, and about how your family can stay healthy together. All right, that is the entire curriculum. Like I said, there are 7 lessons, and those are they. If you have more questions about them, you can reach out to Nick. You can reach out to your kid's teacher too, and you can, if you want to see more of what I showed you, this recording will be available, the slide deck will be available, and the curriculum itself will be available at the district office. Okay, a couple of quick tips before we go home, or before we go and eat our dinner, or whatever we need to do next. So reminder, sexuality begins at birth. You have been teaching your kids about sexuality your whole life, right? So whether the way you call body parts, the way that you model friendships and relationships, those are all lessons that your kids have been learning from you. So be thoughtful about how you do it. What I like to say to parents is, if you've taught your kids about all of the body parts that they have, except between their navel and their knees, you might have unintentionally created some stigma around those private body parts, around those genitals. You can name them. You can let them know that those body parts have names. Those body parts deserve to be taken care of, just the same way that you take care of your knees and your lungs and all of those things too. Reminder to you that puberty is a life stage. It's a human being experience. It happens to all bodies, all humans. It's simply when kids' bodies and brains change into grown-ups' bodies and brains. Something that I want to remind you of, because many of you might have forgotten from when you were younger, it's completely typical, common, normal, and healthy in puberty for kids to be interested in attractions and sexual behavior and who likes who and who has a crush on who, and as well as risk taking and kind of pushing, starting to push those boundaries that teenagers really like to push. Your kids are just getting to be at that stage. Maybe some of them are not quite there. Maybe some of them are already there, but this is kind of the beginning of that when they get into puberty. So, recognize that is completely normal and healthy and typical for them to be wanting to watch movies about, romance, or starting to be able to think about other people and attractions in that way. Again, some kids are, some kids aren't, but it typically does happen during this, 8 to 16-year-old time frame. And then again, remind your kids and remind yourself to remind your kids that everybody develops at their own pace. So some kids, it's just so fun in middle school, right? Because you have like the kids that are still like not even 4 feet and the kids that are already like almost 6 feet, because everybody's developing at their own pace. Reminder that you're your child's primary sexuality educator, and as such, I really want to encourage you to be askable. If your kid has the courage to ask you a question, even if you don't know the answer in that moment, you can say something like, wow, that's a great question. I am really glad you asked. I actually don't know the answer, but let's do some research together. Or I'm not sure. I haven't ever thought about that. Or, oh, I feel a little bit embarrassed. I need to just take a moment and figure out how I want to talk about that with you. If you are not open to their questions, they will take their questions to Siri or Google or somebody else that may or may not be, that may or may not have the same values that you do. So be thoughtful. Kids have tons and tons of questions, and they want somebody that's trustworthy to answer them and give them facts about what's going on. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and kids can be very confused. Okay, so I want you to reframe your strategy that we may have grown up with of like having one talk, like sit down, son or daughter or whatever, and I'm going to tell you all the things. Like that doesn't really work very well with kids, especially nowadays when their attention spans are very short. So, have conversations all the time. Like have as many conversations as you can. Have 1 minute conversations. You don't have to have an hour-long conversation. You can have conversations while you're listening to music. Maybe the songs are about sex or love or romance. Maybe the songs are about, maybe you're listening to music that your kids like and you're like, whoa, that's really like sexist, or like that. Oh, I wouldn't want to date a person that talks to me like that. Or, maybe there's really beautiful songs or music or TV shows that show really healthy relationships. You can comment on that as well. The news cycle is constantly bringing up stuff around sexuality and relationships and unhealthy relationships. So there's always stuff that you can comment on there. If you go to a wedding, if you go to a baby shower, if you go to a quinceañera or bar bat mitzvah, or any of these like, life cycle events, those are also great opportunities to bring up conversations, as is tonight, after you can say, oh, sorry, I didn't make dinner yet because I was on this webinar for your school about your upcoming human growth and development curriculum, and I learned some things that I want to talk to you about. Hey, that's a great teachable moment. Okay. What else? You can ask your own kid for advice. You can say, hey, I heard that some fifth graders are talking about this, or I heard a mom concerned about her kid who's that. What would you say about that? Or what have you heard? Or what do you know? Or what would you tell a mom that is wondering about, if kids are online too much, or if kids are texting? I heard of kids, do kids text pictures of each other, without clothes on, or things like that? And your kids might be like, no, or yes, I do know somebody that did that. Or you can bring it up like that. A direct approach can be helpful. Again, always nice to acknowledge awkwardness. Maybe you feel awkward because nobody ever talked to you about this stuff, but you want to do it differently than your parents did for you. So, and then, I'm about to show you a bunch of slides of resources. I really think having books around the house that kids can go to on their own time and read, and if they don't feel like talking to you, can be really helpful too. Okay, so I want to challenge you to have a conversation, a bunch of conversations with your kids. And so maybe, have an accountability buddy or somebody, maybe it's a co-parent or a friend, that you're going to say like, all right, before the end of March, I'm going to have this conversation with my kid and I want you to check back with me and make sure that I'm doing it. Or I'm going to do some research and then figure out what to talk about with my kid. Oh, sorry, that was that slide. Um, so we actually have a really great self-paced uh, class. I'll make sure, again, you'll get these slides, but I'll also make sure that Nick can put that in the follow-up email. So if you actually, I have two great resources for you. If you want to do an at-home class, like a self-paced e-learning class with your kids, you can log into our learning management system and do a class called The Talk. It's really, really great. There's 3 modules, and I think there's one just for parents and just for grown-ups, and then 2 with grown-ups and kids together. Another place is the chat through Stanford Children's Hospital, and I also happen to teach for them, and so I know they're great. I'm biased, but I know they're great. I do not get any pushback or whatever for or what's it called? Money back or whatever for promoting them. But truly, all the teachers that work there are really fabulous, and that is an opportunity for you and your kid to learn together. And we do them online, and we also do them in person all around the Bay Area. So if you're interested in the chat, you can Google the chat, Stanford Children's Hospital, and find out about that too. Maybe that is something that you want to do with your kid. And then I really love talkwithyourkids.org. I love kidshealth.org. These are some really fun websites. These are some fun books. This Will Puberty Last My Whole Life is the book that the Stanford Children's Hospital puts out. And it's just literally real questions from real kids and answers from health educators. So it's fun. Again, more resources which you can peruse at your own time. And I will quickly put the evaluation into the chat for you right now. And then let's see, I don't know, can I chat with everybody? Yes, I think I
Yeah,
can.
you should be able to. I'm going to address a. Can I
Yeah.
address a couple things?
Yes, please jump in
Okay.
and I'll
I'm going
try
to
to
jump
look
in
through the
with
chat
some
too.
themes and things that came up through the chat throughout the evening and some reminders. Again, week after next, I will send an updated message out to everybody with the links to this recording, links to the slides, so you'll have all these resources, all the things. You mean myself? I'm a parent as well. I have a 7th grader at home. She'll be doing the version of the 7th grade uh, curriculum this year with her science teacher. So we're all this information is for you to make the best choice for yourself. Uh, Everything's gonna be taught by your 5th grade teacher. All of our 5th grade teachers have been trained to teach this curriculum, and how to handle the questions and what to share, what not to share, and to stick to what's in the teaching binder and kind of I'm not gonna call it a script, but like it's very specific. Many of our teachers have done it for a number of years, so your kiddos are in good hands, but it will be with their 5th grade class. If you for some reason choose to opt your child out, in the message that had kind of the RSVP for this webinar, there was links that talked about what the alternative curriculum looked like. It's things like healthy living, exercise, diet, eating healthy, things like that, screen time, things like that. And what would happen is your 5th grade team at your school site and your principal will collaborate and decide like, okay, we're teaching our HGD lessons at 9:30 to 10:15 for this 7 days in a row. Barring any kind of special events that are happening at different sites, and that will be communicated to you. The exact teaching days and probably the time is by the school principal and your 5th grade teachers closer to the time of instruction, but at least 2 weeks in advance. Words of the wise: if you do choose to opt out, you can opt out of specific lessons if you want to. It's the whole lesson of the 7 that Heidi went through. But we can't guarantee that any of those topics won't come back up in another lesson, whether through student discussion or student questions. the playground at lunch and recess. So we're not going to we're not going to make any promises that we're going to completely shield your child from any of this instruction. So usually, if you have any kind of hesitation or want to opt out of something, it's recommended you might just opt out of the whole thing. But again, you have the choice to do all or some, and then your student will work on alternative, like I said, alternative lessons during that designated time in a location or in a classroom designated by your school principal. That was one of the one. Curious, seventh grade curriculum. No, seventh grade curriculum gets more into um, we call it like almost like comprehensive sexual education. So it moves from puberty ed to sex ed. They talk about HIV and different um, sexual diseases, or uh, right, and get a little bit deeper into the healthy practices and things like that. Um, there was another one, opt out time frame where Heidi, there was a question, and I can't. I got the two are blended in my mind right now, the fifth and seventh
Mhm.
grade. How will LGBTQ be explained to students who might not have understanding or grasp of romantic
Romantic.
relationships
Mhm.
yet?
Yeah, so it all it is it's basically who people that people can be attracted to people someday, and they can be attracted to different kinds of people. That's it. Just that it's all. It's just kind of a vocabulary word. Sexual orientation is who someone is attracted to, and so people can be attracted to somebody that has different body parts than them, or the same body parts than them, or people can be attracted to people that have this similar uh activities that they like to do. And so it's just really kind of defined in that way. And yes, it also, it's recognized that some kids, don't feel attractions now or might not ever, but many people will um find themselves feeling attracted or crushes. Really at this stage, we kind of talk a little bit about crushes because a lot of kids do feel crushes and a lot of kids talk about crushes. And so we just want to make sure that they understand how to do that in a safe way and how to, what do they do if they have a crush or someone tells them I have a crush on you, or how can they respond in a way that feels safe and stuff like that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I hope that answers the
it's very
question.
like when it comes to a lot of that stuff, like the gender or and things like that. It's just it's like vocabulary. It's a term and a scientific definition, and that's it. There's no like big discussion or anything that opens up that way. And if there's anything where the teacher has been directed to not um, go down a certain road, it basically the response is, "Oh, that's a great question. You should talk to your trusted adult at home." So there's a lot of redirection that way. If for some reason conversations start going in a direction to where the teacher has not been trained, or the teacher's not comfortable, or it's not part of the specific lesson, that is the kind of normed response that the teachers are trained to give. So there's a lot of, I hate to say the term deflection, but there is a little bit of like, let's stay focused on what we're trying to accomplish. This block is varied and stuff like that. So yeah, that's it. That's all the questions. I think we hit all the questions that came through the chat during the past hour or so. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, I think the bottom line is that we're teaching kids to be respectful of other kids, really, and to treat everybody with kindness and respect. That is the bottom line. And really in fifth grade, it's about understanding how your own body is changing and how how the bodies and brains of humans change during this life stage. That's really what it's about.
yeah, no, absolutely. As a principal, former elementary school principal, current middle school principal, you don't want your kid to be the one that is getting in trouble or labeled as the bully because they're saying something out of ignorance or
Yeah.
they just didn't know, right? And they so all these lessons, both the fifth grade and what I really appreciate about the curriculum that our district has chose is it both in the fifth grade and the seventh grade, it comes from like a lens of empathy and understanding, so that I know what my peer is going through and how it's similar to what I may be going through, regardless of my gender, right? And so it's more of that way, like how to just understand what we're all going through, when we start going through it, and being mindful that we're not saying the something that's going to upset a peer or make me seem like the jerk in the classroom. You know what I mean? So that's kind of that. Um,
I see this. There's one more question that just came in. Is there going to be talk about masturbation? There is one line in the curriculum that basically says, defines that term because kids often ask, which is simply when a person touches their own body in a way that feels pleasurable to them. That's kind of the way that it's talked about. And um, we don't talk about any values around it, like whether it's good or bad or anything like that. And again, if those kinds of questions do come up, we would send them home to you to talk about that.
Yep. And we'll do so like I said, most schools are gonna do um late April, May type of time frame. You'll find out if it's sooner through your school site itself. There might be one or two schools that jump on a little bit earlier, but nothing before like end of March. I'll be sending out some information that we're gonna have Heidi come back and do a presentation for parents about how to talk to your child about certain things. And it has nothing to do with the curriculum. I might be there to say, hey, welcome, and then I'll sign off and leave you at it so that it's just more of education for parents that are interested in it, geared to fourth, fifth, and sixth grade parents. Seventh and eighth grade families are welcome to come as well. But I'll send that information out, and that might be helpful, because we try to time it around the same, right before the instruction of most of the schools happen, so that when the kids do come on with questions, you can be armed with some resources and responses of how to handle things. We also, sometimes have questions of other. I don't know. We have school nurses, we have school counselors, you know what I mean? You can always reach out to your school principal if you need some support in some way. If you're not getting help there or not comfortable with that, you can always reach out to me, and I can try to connect you in any way to get answers you need or things like that. So, I mean, other than that, that's what we got for tonight. All this will come the week after February break. I will send updates with everything. We got to clean up some, things, get slides set up, and get all the things out there. I have a few other logistics I have to work through with some of the principals, and then you'll get everything you need. And I will set up, um, like I'll send like appointment slot times that you can register to come see the curriculum if you wanted to. And I'll be super flexible. If the things I send out don't work for you, just email me. We'll work out a time, and you can come to my office and you can flip through the binder if you need more information than what's on the slides and what you heard tonight. And with that,
Any more questions? Thanks, everyone. It's been lovely spending this time with you. And someone says my daughter and I did the chat with Heidi a few weeks ago. Oh, thank you for saying that. It is really fun. And we do
my
all the heavy lifting for you. We talk about all the things and then we just say, now ask your grown-up what they think. So yeah,
Yeah, my
highly
daughter, I
recommend it.
believe my wife and daughter did it with Heidi a year or two
Oh,
ago
that's so
as
fun.
well with one of her friends and their mom. So yeah,
It's
it's
good.
a good jump.
Yes, we have it in Campbell and Menlo Park. We're actually starting in Santa Cruz. I think San Francisco. I don't know. It's around. So definitely in your area if that sounds like fun. Oh, fun. Okay. Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
I'm gonna shut us down. Have a great night, everybody.